from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. Super happy to be here with you guys. And the phone number, if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, it's 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, is scheduled to be speaking at a rally in Bozeman, Montana. If we can tap into that when it happens, we will. I'll bring it to you live if I can. Vice President Harris, who's running for president, as you know, and is affectionately known on this program as Que mala eres, which in Spanish means how bad you are, and how bad she is indeed. She has agreed to finally do an interview. Now, mind you, she's vice president. It's been, I think, 18 days since she announced for president, or that she'd be the person, clinching the nomination rather. And guess what? She hasn't done an interview. She hasn't sat down with George Stephanopoulos. She hasn't sat down with anybody to do a press conference or anything. She's done some rally appearances, one way, monologue. And if you've heard it, it's the same in every single place. I've been a prosecutor. I know his type. I mean, depending on what state she's in, she might put a little southern twang on it, or change up the tone of her voice. And it's the same speech. I know Donald Trump's type, right? And then she just goes into her attack on him. And, of course, now her running mate, Tim Walz, he's been peddling the term joy. That's a big deal that they've been out there doing. Anyway, point is, she's finally agreed to do an interview. She has not said when it'll be. Matter of fact, she just says, yep, I'm going to do it eventually, hopefully before the end of the month. So we may go all the way into September before we actually see this person that's running for president, the current vice president, actually sit down and say, look, what are your questions? I'm going to answer some of them. We have a First Amendment, and the idea of it, at least, is that the media is the watchdog of our government, right? The watchdog of the people, holding politicians accountable, asking them the tough questions. Now, I wasn't around in the George Washington era, as none of you were either. So I don't know if that was just a farce then, as it is a farce now, but a farce it is. It's fake, it's phony, it's fraud. We don't really have a media that holds people accountable. We have a few members of the media that do that work. But we don't really have a established body known as the media today, the press, that goes after people. And again, they don't have to be vicious. They just have to be viciously in pursuit of the truth, holding people accountable, asking questions when they matter. And that isn't happening. It just doesn't happen. Karine Jean-Pierre, by most accounts, gets to skate by with whatever funny story she's telling that day. And this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems we face is this media that has, I'm going to say, obfuscated its role. It's abandoned ship. It has abdicated the throne that it's supposed to occupy. It's not good. So what do we do? I think we're seeing that, right? We have a handful of really good journalistic outlets that do ask those tough questions. Newsmax, you've got some folks at Fox and others, Breitbart. There's a few out there that ask tough questions and really report on the news in just the facts, ma'am kind of way. But I think it's incumbent upon us to be aware, to be civically engaged, to understand what is required of us as citizens. so that we can ask these questions, because all too often I feel that we're very apathetic. I get into conversations with my friends and my family and others, prior to showtime or earlier in the day, and they're avid consumers of news. So they ask questions like, I don't understand how anybody could even think of voting for Kamala Harris. And thankfully, I'm also an avid consumer of the news, all different types of news. I even go to this crazy website that I do not recommend called beforeitsnews.com. Half of the stuff, or 70% of the stuff on there, is fake, phony, and fraud. But it is a very entertaining place to look at things. But all that being said, I always tell them the same thing. You got to look at all sorts of news from all different places. See what Russian state media is saying. See what the Twitter account of the folks in Iran are saying. See what everybody's saying, how they're spinning it, what it is. And you have to use some deductive reasoning to come up with what you believe is the truth. But it all has to come from a base of what you believe. And ultimately do you believe in the founding of this country, or do you not? Do you believe that we, the people, have a free press that holds our government officials accountable or not? At least in premise, in principle. If you do, then you have a leg to stand on, right? You can try to fix a wrong if you see one. You can get into it. You could start your own type of thing. But you can't do any of that if you don't know what you actually believe, right? Old saying, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. Actually, my podcast, which is in hiatus right now for the summer, but it's coming back real soon, This is America with Rich Valdez. That's how we lock out the show. At the end of it, I always use this quote. Anyway, I digress a little bit, but the point is, we need a media that's going to go after Harris and Trump and everybody, right? And ask them the tough questions. We don't have to worry about them going after Trump because they've been doing it forever, right? They don't go after him for tough questions. They go after him to attack him, as we saw when he went to the National Association of Black Journalists. So what do? We have to hold the media accountable. We have to show people what it is. I saw a friend of mine today. He's a barber. He was a barber with me 25, almost 30 years ago, and he's a barber today. And he was telling me that he's very established. He has his set clientele. He's not looking for new people to be a part of his client base. So he just lets them all have it. I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, I tell them all." I'm like, what do you know about this guy, Tim Walz? What do you know about his record? What do you know about what he's done in Minnesota? And he said 100% of the people that he's asked these questions to don't know the answer. And that begs the question, what are we all doing, right? And myself included. I tend to turn off, right? I turn on for 3 hours at night with you guys, and I love this stuff. But during the day, I'm not out there. I'll go to some rallies. I'll go to different political events. I do. I am somewhat of an activist sometimes. But by and large, I try to live a normal life under the radar, where I'm unencumbered by a lot of things. And I think maybe it's time that maybe some of us step a little bit further outside of that shell, right? Where we're doing a little bit more. And I don't mean you. I think many people listen to the show, by and large, are very active politically, very active with their political speech on Facebook and Twitter, and oftentimes writing me and sending me inbox messages saying they've been put in Instagram jail or Facebook jail because of a comment that they made. And I myself have been censored a bunch of times. So I get it. But the point is, I think you just never stop telling the truth. You never stop banging the drum for liberty. That's it. We just keep telling people what it is. We don't have to do it hatefully. We don't have to do it maliciously. We don't have to do it condescendingly so that they feel belittled or less than because they don't know what we know. We do it in a loving way, in a kind way, in a way where we're hoping to share, the good news of what we know. And I'm not trying to conflate, politics with the gospel. But I am saying we do need to just not lose sight of that. And I'm not saying you have. I'm saying I think I have outside of my work. And I think that's the beginning of it, because people need to know who Kamala Harris is. They need to know who this Tim Walz is, what he's all about, and why he's as radical as he is. Just saying simply he's the most radical candidate ever is not enough, because people who are, I don't know, in their early 20s, who are not politically engaged and trying to figure out how to pay some sort of bill, their cell phone bill or whatever, they don't care. And they're probably radical in their own opinions. So saying that they're a radical is not going to help. Explaining why these positions are radical and why they're contrary to what's in the best interest of America and America's future, that's really where it's at. Keeping it on the issues. So that's my my initial thought. I also want to find out what's going on with Iran, because Iran has been getting very frisky lately, and we heard some news. We haven't heard anything. Is this the calm before the storm? I don't know, but we're going to get into that. And I also want to get some reaction from a former FBI agent and a former Navy SEAL on what exactly happened with this Secret Service failure. It's like every day we have more information that it seems worse and worse and worse, as if that could happen, but lamentably it is. So keep it locked right here, folks. Your calls and more are coming up in about 20 or 30 minutes. And then, of course, on the third hour of the program, all calls, the whole hour, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Based on what the FBI, my colleague from the FBI testified the other day, and they are working on isolating some of those radio frequencies from the state and locals, that there was somebody who did in fact radio out that they had seen the individual with a weapon. What I can tell you is that piece of information, that vital piece of information, and by no fault of anyone, it was a very stressful situation. It did not make it over. Our detail, our counter snipers, everyone that was there that day, were operating under the assumption and under the last bit of information they had received that there was an issue that the locals were working at the 3 o'clock. That's the bit of information that we had, not anything about a weapon.
That is the acting Secret Service Director, Rowe. Obviously, copping a plea doesn't sound to me like he's saying the buck stops here and we're going to do better. It sounds like he's coming up with excuses. And the last hearing they had, they were shouting at each other. It really is, in my opinion, it's very embarrassing to see that this is the state of affairs of how we protect our executives. The president, the former president, vice president, etc. It sucks, to be frank, but that's where we are. And all sorts of new information is coming out. There's this police body cam video that comes out where you see the cops that are engaging this guy or trying to engage him, running back to their car to get a rifle because the one cop observed that he had an AR-15 in a bag filled with lots of stuff, according to him on the video. Another cop is heard on this audio on the video saying, "Oh yeah, I told them when they were here on Wednesday that they needed another guy up here," and just remarkable failures, in my opinion. But what do I know? I'm a radio guy, right? I want to bring in a pro, somebody who has served as a Navy SEAL. He's a former FBI agent as well, and he's the author of Sheep No More. Jonathan Gilliam, welcome back, sir.
You got it, buddy. It's good to be with you. And listen, you may just be a radio guy, but I think you know a thing called standard operating procedures and policy and procedures. And when you show up every day to do your show, or when you're producing a show, you don't show up and hope that somebody else does it. You don't show up and kind of say, we just won't do that today. We won't turn that mic on today.
Right.
We just do it outside. Why do it inside a soundproof studio? You don't do those things because you have standards. If you know what works, and you've learned what works over a period of time that's been handed down to you, and so you stick by those standard operating procedures. And that's just absolutely not done at all in this situation by anybody. And I think the locals are just as much to blame, and I can explain to you why that is. But really, the whole thing was a complete failure as far as law enforcement goes before you even get into the conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to get into all of them because I really want your opinion. Obviously, we all have our own opinions, but yours are based on real life and real action and all of that stuff. And Jonathan Gilliam, I look at this and I think, I was thinking the same thing. And I was thinking, why? And again, I'm just thinking of myself. And I was a volunteer cop for 2 years. I went to a very abbreviated police academy. It was nothing like the full-time guys. But we were taught, if there's some sort of threat to life, you're allowed to use force and escalate that force until there's no more threat. And I'm thinking, if there's a president, any president that's on a stage, former president, current president, and you see a guy with a gun, or there's a guy what would you be doing on a roof during a rally, right? I would think this guy's got a gun. That's would be my thinking. But maybe I'm just, too conspiratorial. Maybe I'm too out there. I'm not those guys. But I'm just thinking, how did all of that happen? You had people in the crowd screaming, "He's got a gun! He's got a gun!" It just. Yeah. It's shocking to me. It really is. So I hear you saying you're blaming the locals, but all I can think of is it really wasn't their job, right? They're always pushed out by the feds saying, this is our thing. You're here to do traffic and crowd control, but, this is our thing. Where does it go from here?
So here's where, let's leave the conspiracy stuff to the side about the Secret Service because that's crazy as it is, okay?
Yeah.
And we can talk all day about the fatal funnel that was created because of their lack of or chosen lack of effort in a threat assessment, right? So, but let's look at the locals and then we'll go to that. But I think this is a very important thing because I have a company. It's called United States Continued Service, and we do crisis management consulting. That's my main thing. And we have many clients that are high level and they do entertainment tours. So in the past 2 years, I've been to over 200 stadiums and arenas and festivals. And
wow.
If you go all the way back to when I left the FBI and done this stuff, it's, hundreds and hundreds. And and also I ran the special events unit in the FBI in New York City. So I was the liaison with all the other law enforcement. I'd be doing exactly this, right? The problem you have is that local law enforcement shows up to these events, and in the entertainment world, they call them germs because they germ on to people. They sit there and watch the stage. They stand around in groups and they talk. And the reality is that they don't look at these special events as though something is going to happen. They look at it like most people look at the schools, the administrators and the school security, that our school probably will never have a shooting here, so we'll just show up and have some coffee and hang out, right? So that's the problem, and that's why you saw the reaction of all these individuals rather than action when they heard something, or they would have seen it themselves. They just are in the mindset that it's not going to happen here. The Secret Service didn't want this building in play, so we're just going to stick somebody in a room and hang out. And then when something goes wrong, you get somebody like this guy who looks over the roof without a weapon pulled, getting a stoop up from somebody with no ladder. And then when he falls back down, he takes off running. Like, I don't know where he was going.
Right. Let's pick up there when we come back.
Yeah.
Folks, we're on with Jonathan Gilliam, former Navy SEAL, former FBI agent, and the author of Sheep No More. This guy's terrific, and I can't wait to hear about the rest of the play-by-play he gives us on this and where it goes from here. We're coming right back with Jonathan Gilliam. It's me, Rich Valdez. Don't move a muscle.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Jonathan Gilliam, former Navy SEAL, retired FBI agent, and we're talking about this cop who gets a little alley-oop, a little assist to look up at the roof from another cop, and he sees this guy who's laying down prone on the roof with a bag full of goodies and an AR at his side, and he's freaking out, and he comes back, and we saw the video just yesterday of all of this. And Jonathan Gilliam, let's pick it up from there.
Okay, so first of all, you're going to hear a lot of sound bites, just like when this first happened from the Secret Service. Nobody from the Secret Service wanted to badmouth the Secret Service. And you're going to hear feds and local law enforcement say this was really nobody's fault because, the way it kind of played out. But that's the problem, is that they're not prepared for this. Okay, so these special events happen all day, every day, all around the world, and it's the same case in every scenario. There's only probably a handful of arenas around the country and festivals where law enforcement is on top of it, where they are there, they show up, and they're there to work, and they're there to keep it secure.
Wow.
And so what you saw here was that there was what we call in the special forces is action beats reaction. And if you don't have a plan, you're going to react, right? They teach that in law enforcement as well, but they tend to forget it in law enforcement. And so what you saw was a lack of a plan by local law enforcement to anticipate the Secret Service's failure turning into something, to the point where on the other side of that building, you had a tremendous crowd over there that could see the stage, right? So why didn't local law enforcement tell those people to leave, that they're not to be there? They should have locked that down regardless of what the Secret Service said. And I think it's very important for me to point this out because this has to change. That, along with the lack of communication, whether it be in the threat assessments, which is the pre-briefing, the combined operation centers, or a dedicated interagency radio channel. These are three mistakes when it comes to communications that are made all over the place, the United States and globally, constantly. And it has to do mostly with ego and people thinking that it'll never happen to them.
Yeah. And this is sounds like a deadly recipe, right? Your
it is.
Ego's big and you don't think it's going to happen. It's going to happen, no?
Well, yeah. I mean, it will happen. I mean, it's not a matter of when. It's a matter of that it will. Excuse me. I mean, it's a matter of that it will. So you're actually playing the possibility game, not the probability game. It's not it's a gamble, but it will happen. It's just a matter of when? Where, how, and why. And in this case, it happened there, just like in Uvalde. Those cops showed up with no plan on how to react to that.
So, with Jonathan Gilliam being the director of the Secret Service, what are the next steps to prevent this from happening to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Trump, J.D. Vance, or anybody else?
Well, I mean, with a $1 billion budget, Rich, there's a tremendous amount of stuff that we could do, But I'll tell you, if Trump is hearing this, which I know he likes you, if he heard this, I would tell him he needs to hire me and just turn me as the fixer. And not because what you're seeing with the Secret Service and local law enforcement is the same thing you see with the FBI when it comes to investigation, the intelligence agencies when it comes to their executives. These executives climb ladders based on checking boxes, not experience. And what happens is you end up getting this terrible soup of people who are incompetent. In other words, they really don't know how to do the job, but they're also stupid because they will refuse to do what needs to be done and listen to the men and women that know what needs to be done. And that's how these things end up happening. If I worked in Trump's cabinet and I was the fixer, I would go from the DOD to the FBI to the CIA to the FBI, the Secret Service, get rid of the ATF, get rid of Homeland Security, and fix these agencies so that they work effectively and efficiently with real operators that need to be there, not a DEI check the box. That's how you fix it.
Yeah, well, operationally, right? But I guess the first step is going and making sure you have the right leadership in place, because clearly here we had this Kimberly Cheadle who did not pass muster, right? She really just wasn't effective in the leadership role. Now you've got this new guy who seems like every day he's yelling at somebody else and trying to defend the organization when the organization is I'm going to say, indefensible at this point, right? They dropped the ball. They had one job, and they didn't get it done. Thank God he's not dead, right? Thank God he moved his head. But outside of that, wow, this is a really a cluster bomb for these people. So you tie everything together with all of these law enforcement agencies, which makes a lot of sense. But what do you do to get the right people in place?
Well, so it's exactly like people have to have a realization. It's just like these males that were boxing in the females Olympics, and they're being, rooted on by women who call themselves feminists. If people call themselves patriots or they care about this country, they should want people in place that are not DEI hires. Like every time I fly on a plane, I'm scared to death because the people who are hired by all these airlines are in these pilot positions. They're getting promoted not only in pilot, but also in maintenance based on DEI, right? So the same thing is happening in law enforcement. So you have to cut that out immediately. And then you have to hire within the ranks based on experience, knowledge, and understanding of the job. And it's from that point, you teach the people how to handle a budget. You don't take people who handle a budget and promote them up to handle things operationally. That's the same problem you have in the DOD when you take a guy who was surface warfare in the Navy working down in the trenches on a ship, and you put him as the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and you expect him to be effective when it comes to running special forces in a conventional war at the same time. It's not going to work. It doesn't work effectively. That's why we don't win. That's why we don't win wars. It's politics.
Yeah, I hear that. Folks, we're on with Jonathan Gilliam. He's an absolute expert on this stuff, former FBI agent and retired Navy SEAL as well. He's the author of Sheep No More, and we've got him for one more segment, and we're going to talk about the latest with Iran. Are we going to war with Iran? Are they just beating the drum because the war machine likes war? Do we need to go to war? I don't know the answer to that yet, but we're going to find out straight ahead with Jonathan Gilliam. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The president has always maintained that we would prefer Iran not to have a nuclear weapon through diplomacy, but he has also made absolutely clear our policy has been crystal. We will not allow Iran to achieve a nuclear weapons capability. We prefer to do that through diplomacy. That hasn't worked, and frankly, that's not really on the table right now. We haven't been talking to Iran for quite some time in terms of diplomacy. So we've got to make sure that we've got other capabilities, other options available to the president, including potential military options, and the Department of Defense works on that every day. Obviously, we have been focused a lot on the Middle East. We have added resources from a military perspective to the Middle East, and we're talking about what we need to do to adjust given these recent threats as well.
All right, that was John Kirby just a week ago, right? That was on August 2nd. And funny how things changed just a few days later. We get this.
The Pentagon is confirming to News Nation that a rocket attack hit outside the Al-Assad air base in western Iraq, injuring several American personnel who were stationed there. It's unclear at this moment who launched the attack, but it does look to be launched by Iranian proxies.
Jonathan Gilliam is our guest, former Navy SEAL, former FBI agent. Jonathan Gilliam, this doesn't look good, or is it just posturing?
First of all, remember in the last segment when I was talking about those people who check the boxes, right? They're incompetent or ignorant, I guess you could say, in operations, but they're stupid because they refuse to listen to people who know what they're talking about. That's exactly how you get into this situation. Who do they think attacked Al-Assad Air Base? I mean,
Right.
how do they come up with the conclusion that dealing with Iran is best done through diplomacy? At what point in history did fundamental Muslims, all the way back through Thomas Jefferson and in United States history, and even past that, did they ever think that hardline Muslim nations will work it out through diplomacy? That's not historically accurate. So Joe Biden, I mean, America should rest assured. We're not going to go to war anytime before December unless the Democrat Party starts to feel like they're not going to win with Kamala Harris. That's the only reason. They won't do it because Iran poses a threat or because Israel might get hit with a nuclear weapon. They'll throw money and they'll posture, but they won't go to war. That's not what the Biden administration does. So,
yeah, but Iran seems to be posturing like they want to go to war.
Well, Iran wants to eliminate Israel, right? That's what they want to do, and but they want to do it in a way that is going to either exhaust Israel's, deplete their resources, and turn more nations against them. That's why the propaganda after October 7th of last year was so important for Iran, because they got on social media and they worked it where Israel did not. That was a massive terrorist attack, and somehow Hamas, which is Iran, and all these morons around the world that think they know what's going on, they turned Israel into the bad guy. And so Iran only knows force. They only know force. And the only way they can be dealt with over the long term is with force. Trump got on the verge of that. He hurt them in the pocketbook, but that is like sweeping the roaches over to your neighbor's house. As soon as you stop sweeping, they're coming back, and that's what's occurred.
10 days ago, the 31st of July, the SJ resolution, SJ 106, was introduced to authorize the use of United States armed forces against the Islamic Republic of Iran for threatening the national security of the United States through the development of nuclear weapons. I found this to be interesting. Is this, again, part of our diplomacy, part of our posturing, or Plan C, Kamala's not winning, we need a war?
Well, it's all those. And I think what you have is, again, they're going to do anything, say anything, make themselves feel very important by passing these resolutions, right? Which, Iran doesn't care. They think eternally. They think on the long term of this war. So even if you went in and you knocked out, the leaders of Iran, but you really didn't do anything else, they're going to come back eventually. It may take them 100 years. They're going to come back. So resolutions and all these other things, they are a Band-Aid on basically an arterial bleed, right? So eventually you're going to have to get up in there and tie that thing off and reroute the artery. And so the problem with the way the Democrats think is they think very similar tactically for themselves, not in warfare, but they think very tactically, how do they, if they lose this time, how are they going to win the next time? And how can they set themselves up with the tools that they have to defeat Trump and the Constitution? And so they very well may set something up so that they could go to war. These things aren't unheard of for the Democrat Party and the rhino Republicans who allow them to do it.
Yeah. Folks, we're on with Jonathan Gilliam. He's terrific on this stuff, former Navy SEAL, former FBI agent. Jonathan Gilliam, let everybody who's listening know, in addition to your special events work, how do they find you if they want to hear more from you?
Well, you can Google my name, but the algorithm puts another Jonathan Gilliam at the top, who I'm on national television and radio constantly, and somehow this guy. So if you see the big beard, that's me, okay? So they can find me on Twitter, Instagram. They just look up Jonathan T. Gilliam, and you'll see my beard and my face, and you'll find me. And I try to answer messages when people write me. I try to give them feedback because I think people need to know what's reality. News has changed. They like young girls and soy guys to come on there and talk about stuff that they don't know. And that's the problem with media these days, is there's no experts in the media.
I hear that, brother. Well, you're one of the experts, and we appreciate you being here, brother. Godspeed to you. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot.
And a warrior. And God bless you, brother.
You too, brother. Thank you. Folks, your calls and more when we return. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio has ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We go to the phones, your calls and more right now. 833-4-VALDEZ. Let us go to Jeff, Dothan, Alabama, WDBT. Go right ahead quickly.
Hey, the question that I have, I hope President Trump hears it, because I've heard no one ask this, and to me it is proof Secret Service was involved. This is the question: how would the shooter know to get on that building? How would he know that they're not going to put an agent on that roof? He had to have that information before he brought his gun or ladder inside. Or did he just get that lucky? Well, I think I'll choose that building. Maybe they won't get up there.
Yeah, excellent question. Excellent point. I tend to believe the same. I don't think, again, I really don't. It's a tough sell for me to think that you have this kid that's, I have kids that age. And I love my kids, but I can't imagine them hatching a scheme to go assassinate a president and being that effective at it where they get his ear. I just don't see it happening. I'm sure he had some sort of help from somewhere. What, who, and how, we don't know, and that's what we need to find out. Jeff in Dothan, Alabama, thank you very much. Let's go to the other side of the country, Oregon, Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. Let's check in with Monica. Monica, you're on with Rich Valdez.
Hey, how are you doing tonight?
Wonderful, thank you.
I tried to call last night. I was on the line, and then the dang electricity went out.
Oh, man, that's the deep state. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, it was the same thing I was on last night. I had this god-awful shopping trip where I was buying a few groceries, and, like, a carton of heavy whipping cream should never cost nearly $10 a carton. Just the store brand. Yeah, so then I'm irate, and then I'm starting to think, you remember that Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd cartoon where they did
rabbit
an
season.
opera?
Rabbit season.
And he's like, kill the wabbit, kill the wabbit. I made up another parody, but I won't repeat it because I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And while we were on hold, my daughter's in the kitchen. She wants to hear Mom on our little transistor radio. We came up with We came up with a name for Kamala Harris, and okay,
what's
I'm going
the
to
name?
come out now. You can tell him our new name for Kamala. All right, I guess I'll just say it then.
Go ahead.
But we decided to call her Scamala Carelessness.
That's pretty clever. Scamala. I like it. I'll just, the carelessness will it takes a little bit, but Scamala Harris is pretty funny. Thank you, Monica. I appreciate it. Big shout out to you. And yeah, listen, you're not the only American that's feeling it in the pocketbook when they go to the grocery store. Godspeed to you. Hang in there. I think the best is yet to come. And folks, we return with hour number 2 coming up straight ahead. The legality of the student loan scheme and what are they doing to address inflation? Not nearly enough. More on that when we come back. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Friday night. If you want to join us, the phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, and plenty going on. We're keeping an eye on what's happening with the Trump rally in Montana. Trump's expected to take the stage in a little bit. We'll keep you up to speed on that. A couple of quick headlines before we move into the topic for this part of the show. Vice President Harris, who I like to call "Que mala eres," which in Spanish means how bad you are, and how bad she is indeed. She has agreed to do an interview, although she hasn't said what interview and with what press outlet and when. But she did say, yeah, I'm looking to do an interview maybe by the end of the month. So, Kate Malaitis, we're looking at. She's like, yeah, I've talked to the team. We're thinking of doing it by the end of the month. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being nearly 20 days in to your nomination of that didn't even happen yet, the virtual nomination. And still no hardcore interview, no hard-hitting Leslie Stahl, Chris Wallace, I don't know. It would be great if she did it with somebody from Newsmax, right? Like James Rosen or somebody like that. A real journalist that, willing to ask the questions that need to be asked. Anyway, let's see. What do we got here? The president of the company called Smartmatic, it's a parent company of one of the voting machine companies, was indicted by the Department of Justice. Interesting stuff here. Why? For taking bribes. Now, we don't have all the details, but the president of the voting machine company, Smartmatic, was indicted on money laundering and bribery charges. I'm wondering if this guy hangs out with Hunter Biden. Because I've heard that before, right? Not that he hangs out with Hunter, but Hunter's guilty of the same crimes. The president of this voting company's name is Roger Piñate. Piñate, that's the N with a little line over it, and a squiggly line. And he has been indicted on federal grand jury charges for bribery, money laundering, and in order to get election contracts in the Philippines. I wonder what else this guy's done. Smartmatic was founded in 2000, and its voting machines have been used in elections where? In Venezuela, where they're contesting an election, where the people say they have 70% of a plurality on the vote. And Maduro, the dictator there, says, no, I won. Crazy. By the way, we also use these machines in the United States as well, or some version of them. Let's see. What else do we have here? We've got Harris accepting only one of the 3 debates that Trump has proposed. Once we have the confirmation on the other debates that he's agreed to, we will bring you that. And I've got a report from in L.A. from our buddy Marco, who is telling us about student loans. Listen to this.
Good news for millions of Americans struggling to pay off their student loans. If that is you, the U.S. Department of Education will be emailing borrowers with updates on this potential debt relief. If you don't want the relief, you have until August 30th to call your servicer and opt out. Once rules are finalized, it means debt relief could come as soon as October. The largest group includes people with runaway interest, people who owe a larger debt now than they did when they initially took out their loans due to ballooning interest. The relief would reduce or cancel the interest that's built up, depending on income levels. Next in line would be people paying their loans for 20 years or longer, but still haven't paid them off. If it's implemented as drafted and if it survives expected lawsuits, this could give some amount of relief to 25 million people.
Again, that's Mark Cota Robles from ABC 7 in Los Angeles. And this whole student loan thing is an interesting thing, right? I walked into my house the other day, or I was on my front step, and I grabbed some mail, and I saw a couple of letters from my student loan servicer, and it said, Don't worry, your loan has not been sold, but we have transferred the servicing of this from here to there to X, Y, and Z, whatever, and blah, blah, blah. I also got an email from the United States Department of Education saying, hey, listen, you may be eligible for some sort of relief. If you don't want the relief, you have to call this 1-800 number and do X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, you don't have to do anything. And if you qualify, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, I don't want to pass my burden on to anybody. I agreed to take these loans, and that's my thing. However, who doesn't want a free lunch, right? And I think that's the idea behind it, right? They want to entice people with the free lunch in order to get a vote from them and some sympathy come election day. That's my thought. But we're going to get to the bottom of this, because is this even legal? It wasn't that long ago where the Supreme Court said, guess what? You can't do that. You can't just go and forgive all this debt. You don't have that authority per se, Mr. Biden, President Biden. So he came up with a new way of doing it, where he's changing the regulations around how things are paid back through something clever that they call income-driven repayment. And I've read about this, and I honestly don't understand how it works. But he seems to be getting away with it, Joe El Baboso Biden and Kamala Harris, the vice president. And I'm wondering, what happens from here on? Does this continue? What the story is, I don't know. But William Trachman, who's general counsel for the Mountain States Legal Foundation, is with us to weigh in on the legality of this whole student loan scheme. Sir, welcome.
Thank you. Greetings from Colorado.
All right. I love Colorado. So talk to me about this, because I think I read about this and I can barely understand it. I think most people, they get what they hear on the news. We're going to be paying a lot of student loans. This debt is going to be transferred to the people, or is it just going to be eliminated and taken as a loss by the government?
Yeah, so for listeners who have been to college, they probably know that tuition and room and board have been going up and up and up. This is a very expensive education, especially if you're going to a flagship university or an Ivy League. And so universities have not slowed down their tuition increases. They've essentially said, we'll raise the price, and then you can take out student loans in order to cover it. And a lot of these folks are part of the base for President Biden and Vice President Harris. And so they've been trying for a couple of years to work on what they call student loan forgiveness through the U.S. Department of Education, which itself manages many, not all, but many student loans. And so they had a program 2 years ago that was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court because they didn't go through Congress. And that's really what they're trying to do again. They're trying to find other ways of getting around Congress by unilaterally acting through the U.S. Department of Education. I do have a little bit of breaking news, which is that just in the last few hours, their effort has been halted. So not fully judgment against it, but the appellate court just in the last few hours said the plan cannot go forward as it's written. It's just like the last plan. It's unlawful, or looks unlawful. And so you have to go through Congress once more. Well, how many times would you say go through Congress? Right.
Wow. That's interesting. That's good. I'm glad we're on live and late night to bring you this update. So this is interesting because, again, I'm glad I got that letter, because I'm sure I wasn't the only person that got the letter that said, hey, help is on the way, right? And clearly it's not. And the administration's trying hard here to do that. And I'm sure for good reason. I mean, from a political perspective, it's obvious to me that one of the biggest supporters of, I'm going to say, left of center policies are those in academia, the academicians themselves, the professors and whatnot. So it seems like it's like a consortium that we've built, right, between the left within the Democrat Party, the left within academia, and they kind of, I'm going to use the word conspire, to crank out graduates that are like-minded and have sipped their Kool-Aid. Do you really believe that the court is going to be able to intervene? I guess if you had to read the tea leaves, how does this move forward? Do they just make some policy changes and change some words around, or is this really the end of Biden's attempt to create this free loan forgiveness stuff?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right that, this is an effort. It's a vicious cycle because university administrators love to have more and more students, especially if they can spread out those students across majors, and some of those majors are going to be less profitable than others. Your computer science major is going to have a much easier time paying off their loans than your gender studies major. I've seen a meme recently where the son says, "Dad, I want to go become a philosopher," and the dad says, "Oh, that's perfect. They just opened that philosophy factory downtown." So not quite right.
Right.
And so the administration has said, "Look, we've got a problem here. A lot of the people that are in our camp owe a lot of money. They can't pay it off. And what do we do?" And so they've kind of searched around in the dark for old statutes that have regulatory empowerment provisions that say the Department of Education can interpret this statute as it sees fit. And so they'll take, a statute that's 30 or 40 years old. The last time around, it was a 9/11 statute. This time around, it's a different statute. And say, oh, you know what, we're going to interpret this old statute and say it gives us the power to reduce student loans down to zero for some significant portion of people. I really don't think that this is going to fly. I mean, first of all, there's not much time left on the clock in the Biden administration. But second, this has already been struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court once. So it's hard to see how they could say, well, we found a different route. You didn't like the way that we did it before with the 9/11 statute, but we just misread that statute, and now we've read this statute the right way, and it gives us the power we need to forgive all these student loans without having gone through Congress. I'm very skeptical that the Supreme Court is going to say, oh, yeah, you're right, that we believe you. You misread the last time, but you got it right this time.
Right. Folks, we're on with William Trachman, General Counsel at the Mountain States Legal Foundation. And I'm going to take a quick pause right here. We're going to come right back with William Trachman and put a pin in this discussion and a couple of other things. And plus, we have more discussion to come. And we also have Open Phone America at the top of the next hour. The phone number for that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we continue our conversation with William Trachman, who is General Counsel for Mountain States Legal Foundation. And there was a big win for a photographer in New York who... it was a free speech case, and I don't have all the details on it, but William Trachman does. Tell us about it.
So this is a case about a woman named Emily Carpenter, and you've probably heard about similar cases around the country, like Masterpiece Cake Shop in my home state right here in Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
Involving whether you have to provide services to a same-sex wedding that are creative in nature. So it's one thing if you're setting up the tables or putting the tablecloths on the tables. But if you have to draft the website content or bake the cake or take photos or draft the handwritten invitations, there's been this running debate about whether you have a right to say, no, I don't want to use my creative services for something I don't agree with them. They might serve gays generally, but they don't want to be a part of a same-sex wedding. And so here you had a situation where the court had dismissed the case without anything, with no evidence, no discovery. They just said, nope, we're not going to let this suit go forward. And Ms. Carpenter appealed. And after the Supreme Court decided a Colorado case about a year ago called 303 Creative about websites, the Second Circuit said, you know what, if the Supreme Court decided that case that way, it basically applies to this case in front of us. So they reversed the district court and sent it back down to start over again. So it is a win in the sense that the district court, the trial court, ruled against her, and now that's been reversed, so she has to start from scratch. But really, the idea is, look, people ought to have the right to say no to services that they don't agree with personally, especially when they're, there's an ideological component to this. Certainly, a lot of people are supportive of same-sex marriage. It's been, the law of the land for 9 years now. But people are allowed to dissent. You're allowed to be a religious person who doesn't agree with same-sex marriage. And the fact that they would force you to either bake the cake or take the photo or draft the website is anathema to a free country. And so it's good that we are letting people live their conscience. And I'd say the same thing if it were a Muslim person who objected to a same-sex wedding. I myself am Jewish, and so I don't have the same belief structure as Emily Carpenter does, but I absolutely respect her right to say I'm not interested in participating in this ritual. It's not for me. And thankfully, I think she'll have that right when the court gets down to it.
Outstanding. Now, William Trachman, General Counsel for the Mountain States Legal Foundation. Tell us a little bit about what the foundation does.
Yeah, thank you. So we are a constitutional law firm. That is, we are the Constitution's lawyers. We practice in 4 key areas. So First Amendment, free speech, like the case we just talked about. Second Amendment, gun rights. 14th Amendment, equal protection rights. So that's like race discrimination and gender discrimination. And then last, natural resources and property rights. So we represent a lot of farmers and ranchers and energy interests that want to responsibly extract resources and help our domestic energy supply. So we're what you might call a conservative or libertarian law firm, and we do a lot of freedom-oriented cases. We're a pro bono law firm. That means we don't charge our clients by the hour, and we're always looking for new supporters and new cases. So we have a page on our website where if someone has an idea for a case, they're welcome to write in, tell us about it. Maybe it's a good case for us, and we'll have a new client from a listener from your show right now.
Outstanding. And what I'm hearing you say is that when I get into trouble on a free speech issue, because I like to talk a lot here, I'm calling you guys first. So I'm putting you on speed dial. And folks, if you want to help their cause, donate to them, follow their work, and support them, William Trachman, where do they go?
So our website is mslegal.org. That's mslegal.org, mslegal.org. And then if you want to look at our X handle, it's at MSLF. You can see some of our most recent cases and statements to the media. We just had a big publication this morning in the Washington Post about our anti-DEI cases in the prison system in Colorado, where our client was basically forced out of his job after he was told he's a white supremacist and he couldn't ever interact with African-American prisoners without being a racist. So he left his job.
That's simply because he was white.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy. Wow. Well, William Trachman, I want to thank you for being here, and we'll get an update on that case when you come back next time, because that sounds interesting, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. And if you don't fight back against it, we'll see even more of it. Godspeed to you, sir. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much, Rich. Have a great night.
Yes, sir. You too. And amigos, we continue. So what does the government do if inflation is running amok? Do they stop spending? No. They start strong-arming the companies, saying, listen, you got to charge less for stuff. People need help. Unbelievable. Don't go anywhere. Bill Dendy's coming up. We're talking about inflation and more. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation. We are live and we are late night. As I can see it, Donald Trump is taking the stage in Bozeman, Montana, about to address the crowd, but he hasn't made his way to the podium just yet. He's taking steps towards the podium right now, and we're going to tap in live.
You have a great governor in this state. You know that, Greg. You have a great. But we went around the state, and it was so beautiful. And I'd say, when will I be there? Approximately 2.5 hours. So, oh, great. Thank you. It's a big state. It's a beautiful state, and we love it. And we've won it every time by a lot. So I'm thrilled to be back in this incredible place, this beautiful state with thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots, which is what you are. You built the country. Less than 3 months from now, we are going to defeat radical left Democrat John Tester. He's terrible. He is terrible. He is terrible.
All right, folks, that's Donald Trump. We're going to keep you up to speed on everything that's going on at the rally, and we'll bring you some clips of that, and we'll tap in live again in a little bit. But right now, I wanted to talk about what's going on with inflation, right? A while back, we had Steve Forbes on the show, and he was making some comments about inflation, and it hasn't gone anywhere. And, of course, the government has a new approach on how they want to deal with it. But first, let's talk a little bit about inflation. Check this out.
The Fed should learn you don't fight inflation by depressing the economy. You do it by stabilizing the dollar, doing what Reagan did. How about that? Cutting taxes and reducing regulations. And guess what? People do amazing things. They progress. They move ahead. That's real, the progressives, the American people unleashed, moving ahead.
And I think he's right. But that isn't the approach that the government has taken here. Right now, we've got the government almost urging, right? I remember early on when this inflation was starting to take off, it was COVID's fault. Then it was Putin's fault. Then it was just inflation is transitory. And now, I don't know if you remember, when gas was going up, they were saying, no, it's because they're price gouging at the pump. And, right, that was Joe El Baboso Biden saying that. And then they said that they were price gouging with everything. And ultimately, he was putting pressure on gasoline station owners, right? Saying it wasn't even the gas companies. It was the individual gas station owners that were doing this. I mean, everybody had fault in this except for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the Democrats in our government in Washington. And that's the latest scheme as well. They're back to trying to get businesses to lower their prices because they're doing a poor job at managing monetary policy. I don't make it up. I just tell you what's going on. I want to bring in our expert here because this is something I think we need to understand. And Bill Dendy's been with us before, financial strategist, CPA, money manager. He's president of Alicorn Investment Management, Inc., and he is with us now. Bill Dendy, welcome back.
And thank you so much. And I think it's interesting. You make a good point. There seems to be this pressure that somehow the companies are taking advantage of the poor consumer. And we want now our government to just set the prices. Let the government just tell us how much we should manufacture everything and what the price needs to be, regardless of what makes economic sense, because they obviously know what's best, and free markets don't matter anymore. The government should tell us how the prices should be set going forward. This makes no sense at all, and it totally goes against so much of what these companies now pushing back, saying, we didn't raise the prices. The cost of our inputs have gone up so much, we have to raise the prices. Our margins did not increase, and our profitability is not nearly as much as you think it is, and there are the years that we have to take the losses and still survive.
Yeah, great point. And I think it's, this again is, I kind of started the show with this today was, you know, the old saying, if we stand for nothing, we'll fall for anything. And I used it in the context of, we have to know what we're talking about. And I think for too many Americans, and this is not an indictment on them really or a critique, it's really an admonition for everyone. If we don't understand how things work, maybe we should understand them, right? We should learn to understand them. Because I think for too many Americans, we just go, oh, that's how it is. You know, I've heard people tell me, well, you know, after COVID, the whole world went up in cost. And that was it. They just accepted that because everybody was dealing with it and as if that was acceptable or okay, and not understanding why and how our government, the people that we elect to do this job, plays a role in this, and the role of taxes and, of course, printing money and all of these other things that go into this. Spending, obviously, amongst the biggest of them.
You're exactly right. And both parties are tapping into the frustration that people are feeling.
Of course.
I mean, we all feel it now. You see it in everything. I'm hearing a lot of parents saying purchasing things for sending the kids back to school is a burden to them now because, like everything else, is 20 to 25% more than what it was 4 years ago. And with every dollar already spoken for, because maybe wages didn't go up, 25%, but the cost of everything we buy went up 25%. People feel pressured to have to take care of the children, get them to school. But gosh, how do we cope with this? Yet they're being manipulated by the cause of underlying what makes inflation happen. And it's not that one day the whole world wakes up and says we're going to go make some more money by charging higher prices. Yet that's what is being touted as price gouging, and companies taking advantage of the higher cost to pass costs along. That they are passing the cost along. But I don't know if you saw McDonald's actually had a reply back saying, yes, things are up 21 to 28%, but so is everything else. We had to raise the prices to survive. Usually they don't say anything. They keep it kind of quiet, but it's pushback. And one grocer deciding to make excess margins, well, that's presuming that there's no competition out there. And maybe in some places there is less competition, and there is that risk that we have fewer companies surviving, and so they have more price control. But in a competitive environment, if a company starts making excess profits, it will attract competition from all sorts, or even new entrants into the market. So it's not that. It's not that the companies all woke up and decided to get evil and raise prices on the poor consumer. It is the something else. It is the raising our national debt. It is spending money aggressively at the government side, and having a really robust economy anyway, so people were feeling comfortable after COVID that they're going to have their jobs, and they had excess cash, and so there was that COVID vacation that everybody suddenly had, and that spending that caused a good economy. The challenge is things were too good. So to slow it down, we slow it down by raising interest rates, but some people think we may have killed the economy, raised the rates too high, slow things down, and now we're turning around and saying the economy's slowing down and cost of everything is too high, and that's that circular argument.
Yeah, really, really well put. Bill Dendy, stick with us. I have a couple of more questions for you, if you don't mind, on where we go from here fiscally and the financial system particularly. Folks, we're coming right back with Bill Dendy, CPA.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
There is more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
What else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously. Very seriously. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously.
Real serious. That was Kamala Harris back in 2021. That's a file tape. Nothing's changed. Things have only gotten more expensive, and she's still done absolutely nothing to help except to make things worse. But another flashback, Monday, right? We had this crazy sell-off in the markets on Monday. They seem to have rebounded somewhat. things are looking better. I want to bring back our guest, Bill Dendy, CPA. What are your thoughts on what happened Monday and the Japan market, and should we expect another crazy Monday this week?
Well, I think that Monday and since Monday is a sign for a lot of people that they should pay attention to, that the market is rather jittery. It's got equal reason to go up and down right now. It's a little schizophrenic looking. If you watch it one day, things are terrible. The next day, things are okay again. But Monday was a reaction to several things that occurred. Any one of them might have jolted the markets a little bit, but to lose 1,000 points in a day, and granted, 1,000 points isn't what it used to be. With a market around 40,000, 1,000 points so different than 30 years ago when the market was at 2,000. So 1,000 points doesn't mean as much percentage-wise, but it still gets your attention when you see a 1,000-point drop in the Dow. And that, on Friday, before the Monday drop, it was because we got bad labor numbers. We saw that the unemployment rate was higher than it's been in the past 3 years, and still low by historical standards, but it looks like things are going the wrong direction, and it was worse than what was expected by the analysts. So that puts the market in a little jitters, thinking that this raising the interest rates to slow down inflation, the raising the interest rates slows down the economy, and maybe the Fed left rates up too high, too long, and they may have not just slowed down the economy, they may have stalled out the economy, and we might be getting our results in, and the labor numbers may have been the first numbers, and people were concerned that that was a negative. So Friday, the market was already concerned. But then over the weekend, Japan's equivalent of the Fed raised their interest rates with no announcement. Just surprise, we're raising our interest rates. Now, our Fed is very slow to act. They announce, they tell us what they're going to do. They tell us they're thinking about doing it. They're thinking harder about doing it. We're really probably going to do it next time we get together. And then they do it because they don't want to shock markets. But the Japanese equivalent of the Fed raise rates all of a sudden as a surprise move, and that caused their currency to jump up in value, which is really good. But in their own economy, just like raising interest rates here slows down our economy, it slows down their economy. The cost of borrowing gets higher. And so their market had the worst day it's had since like 1987. Major drop in the Japanese market on that Monday. And that caused ripple effects across around the world. And, of course, the U.S. market had those two things to contend with. And on top of that, politics has gotten more uncertain. The polls started coming out saying, well, gosh, this race looked like Trump was going to be far in the lead. It's more neck and neck right now. And neck, the market can handle almost anything but not knowing. And not knowing drives them crazy. That uncertainty is not received well. And so the uncertainty of the politics, the sudden strengthening of the yen compared to the dollar, and people wanting to get out of dollars in favor of yen because they're paying so much more now. While the U.S. is looking like our rates are going to come down, the rates on the yen went up, so that weakens our dollar to the Japanese yen, and having the unemployment numbers all came together to spook the market. But over the week, things came out to say, well, the other numbers for our economic conditions aren't so bad, and Japan rebounded really quickly. They had their best day since 2008 or so as they bounced back, and the U.S. markets bounced back as well. But for the average consumer, this should be, and for the average investor, this should be kind of like a warning. Things are getting choppy. If we have too much in the market because it's been good to us lately, it may be time to go ahead and move some money out of the market. The drop was not such a big sale that you want to run in. When the market's off 5%, it's like going to a retail store. If they have a 10% off if you do this credit card deal, it's probably not going to excite you. The market being down 30, 40, 50%, like the corrections we saw in the year 2000 and 2008, well, that's when people say, hey, the market's a value. So it didn't get so cheap that we should be pushing money in, and it did rebound very nicely, but it may be a time to reallocate, especially because the Fed is now almost 100% certain to lower rates. There are those who are seeing this window of opportunity of higher interest rates maybe closing, and this may be a time to get their longer-term bonds or longer-term CDs that are still yielding about 5% while the getting's good, because in 2 or 3 years we may be back down to 3% again as the Fed lowers interest rates, and they may feel forced to lower interest rates if we have a slide of our economy into a recession.
Wow. Bill Dendy, I appreciate that. And before we wrap, really quick, in about a minute or so, could you give me a quick assessment, your thoughts on our currency? Do you think that we do go back to a gold standard to combat Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, the BRICS consortium trying to eat our lunch, or do you think that's just overplayed hype?
It'd be so difficult for us to come off of fiat money to a gold standard. And y'all may, some people, some of our listeners might remember when we went off the gold standard and onto the silver standard, and then off the silver standard to the fiat money, and Nixon, and they said the money won't last, and things have continued on. But I think one of the biggest concerns that most Americans should have is we have debt ceilings that we're not adhering to. We keep raising our debt ceilings. We've gone from the 20 trillion to 33 trillion, 34 trillion in national debt in just a few years. It used to be 40 to 60% of our gross domestic product. Now we're over 100% of our gross domestic product in our national debt. And that's not good for a country long term. And the only way we tend to pay that off is either paying it off with deflated dollars, which means hyperinflation, which we don't want, or raising taxes, which we don't want, because that also has a drain on the economy and slows us down. So we're pushing ourselves into a challenging situation, and regardless of how the politics fall out, we do need to have more fiscal responsibility for the good of our children and grandchildren.
Right. Got it. Bill Dendy, thank you. I'm out of time in this segment. I want to thank you for being here. Folks, go to alicorninvestmentmanagement.com if you want to learn more about Bill's work. Bill, I appreciate you being here. Hope to speak with you again soon.
God bless you. It's always a pleasure.
You too. God bless. And folks, we're coming right back. Open Phone America at the top of the next hour. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we continue. President Trump is giving his speech at the rally in Bozeman, Montana. We're going to tap in for a second. Check this out.
Country happened, but I took a look. And because I took that look, I mean, what are the chances of that? So I just want to thank everybody, because I'll tell you what, the level of love and compassion and all of the things that we all went through, that was a terrible thing. And we're going to be very careful. We have to be very careful. This is, by the way, being president is a dangerous profession. You know, this is a very dangerous, this is not the safest profession out there. But it was an amazing event. And for those of you that don't believe in God, I believe that there's only one reason that could have happened, because the chances were so...
The chances are slim. He believes in God. Trump talking about the Almighty saving him from his assassination attempt. We'll continue to keep you monitored on what's going on here at the Bozeman rally in Montana. And I'm coming back. It's hour number 2 with your calls and more. Rich Valdez, 833-4-VALDEZ. Give me a call.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Friday night. We're live, we're national, and our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez if you want to join the program. And, of course, the legacy line continues, 866-50-JIMBO if you want to use that as an homage to Jimbo Hannon. Feel free to do that. Love that. And I want to go over a couple of quick headlines. Of course, Trump is speaking live in Bozeman, Montana. We're going to tap into that in a little bit. We're going to get to your calls. We got calls from across the country right now, and even one international caller that I see on the screen. And Kamala Harris has agreed to finally have an interview, although she says it's just going to be eventually. We're going to do it maybe at the end of the month. It's almost 20 days. I think it's been 17 or 18 days that she has been the official nominee, and todavía nada, still nothing. So once we find out where she's going to do her hard-hitting sit-down interview, imagine if she did it with one of the Newsmax personalities, right? Like Lydia Serrani or something like that. Imagine a sit-down with Kamala and our friend Lydia. But wouldn't that be epic? I think it'd be great. But I doubt it. I doubt she has the courage to do that. Anyway, we will keep you up to speed on that. We've also got the CEO of Smartmatic, the voting machine company that's used in Venezuela, and also I believe some of their machines were used, not those machines, but some of their machines are used here in the United States. This guy was indicted on bribery charges and money laundering. Apparently, he was bribing to get contracts to use voting machines in the Philippines. And we're going to get some reaction from our buddy Gil in the Philippines on that in a little bit. And let me see, what else do we have here? We've got Jack Smith, the special prosecutor in the Trump case, requesting a delay in the January 6th case, probably because he knows he's not going to win at this point. And we've got a lot of other stuff. I want to get to some of your calls, and let's do that now. Let's go to the aforementioned Gil in Manila, Philippines. Gil, what's your thought on this this story that they bribed somebody in the Philippines in order to get a contract so they could vote? Gil, do we have Gil? All right. Well, we'll look on finding Gil, but the president of the voting machine company Smartmatic, Roger Piñate, has been indicted by a federal grand jury on bribery and money laundering charges in order to get election contracts in the Philippines. According to the Miami Herald, Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez also chose Smartmatic to replace the country's previous voting machines back in 2004. And we already know there's a whole bunch of mess over there. Piñate, anyway, he and his alleged co-conspirator, Jorge Miguel Vasquez and Eli Moreno, have now been accused of giving former chairman of the Philippines Commission on Elections, Juan Andres Donato Bautista, $1 million in bribes to secure the contracts. And this is from the United States Department of Justice. This is their statement. Listen to this. Let me see. What do we... Their statement just went away. Hold on. Here we go. These bribes were allegedly paid to obtain and retain business related to providing voting machines and election services for the 2016 Philippine elections, and to secure payments on the contracts, including releasing value-added tax payments. The conspirators allegedly funded the bribes through a slush fund created by inflating the cost per voting machine. That's what the prosecutors said in the news release. The co-conspirators were able to pay the bribes by over-invoicing the cost of each voting machine in the election and hiding the payments using coded words to refer to accounts that contained the funds. And that was reported by Just the News. So how about that? How about that? The voting machine company president indicted. And that's just the one thing that we know that he's done. Who knows what else has been going on with these voting machines and voting machine companies? I don't know, but I've heard a lot of things in the last 4 years, and I'm pretty skeptical of a lot of those things. And I do want to go to your calls. Let us go to, let's see, where do we go? Let's go to Allison calling us from Portland, Maine, WLOB. Allison, go right ahead.
Hola. You say Kamala, I say Kamala, I say Kamala. You say Kamala. Please, 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 let's call the whole thing off. Anyway, that's a very short version of that classic old song. I cannot believe the way the media, Mr. Trump gives an hour-long press conference, and they drag out those same terms they always do. It's just so weird. They say rambling, yada, 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 right? And he's, and then she comes out and barely answers one or two questions, and, oh, what a great event, all that. It's just ludicrous. It really is absurd.
Yeah, the double standard.
I kind of wanted to talk a little about, not the Oscars, the Olympics, because I'm like Caitlyn Jenner, and we haven't talked about the trans thing in a while. But I think this thing with the transes and whatever competing and this character is not exactly a trans. It's more like a intersex, or whatever they call it now, or something with male chromosomes.
Yeah,
but,
this is what they're saying. I don't know if that's even accurate. According to the IBO, right, the International Boxing, or the IBA Boxing Association, they're saying that that's just what they're saying as cover story, that they understand these people to be biological males, and that's how they would be categorized in the IBA, in the International Boxing Association. It's the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, that's saying that this person has this SDS, this unique sexual intersex, both organ type of thing. I don't know how accurate that is, because the athlete himself, either way, has not come out and said anything about it. They've just kind of let everything go and continued competing. And that's probably the biggest red flag for me. And I understand some people, Allison, are going to say, I'm not going to dignify that with a response. But I think when your entire credibility as an athlete is on the line, you have to say something, right?
Yeah, and I just, and I'm not into sports, really. I did tennis when I was younger, but just for fun, just for exercise. But, Caitlyn Jenner is totally on the, just totally right about this. I think it's absurd. And especially weird that...
Well, but for the audience's benefit, if you don't mind, hang on. I just want to play the Caitlyn Jenner so that they could hear what we're talking about, and then we'll come right back to you. Go ahead.
XX, you're with the women. XY, you're with the men. It's got to come down to that, and because, honestly, this issue has hurt the Olympic Games so much because everybody's talking about it.
Right.
And we have had tremendous performances. And what's happening now? Just a couple of days ago, what was it? Title IX went into law.
Right.
Okay, because Joe Biden, I think illegally, tried to change Title IX, putting trans women, biological men, with Title IX protection.
Exactly, which is absolutely wrong. What would you do with this?
Kamala Harris hasn't said anything, but she doesn't.
But she doesn't do
the
media.
Same
way. She has in the past. Her California record is the same way. California schools will not notify parents about their gender issues.
Absolutely. And who's the only one that says we have to protect women's sports?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Now that again is Caitlyn Jenner, formerly Bruce Jenner. An Olympian himself when he was an athlete, and now he's transgender. And he himself says that this is not good. Our guest, or our caller, Allison from Portland, Maine, also transgender, weighing in, saying she agrees with Jenner. And what's interesting, Allison, is I also had some boxers on, a champion boxer, IWF and IBF, and a Golden Gloves female champion, two-time champion. Mm-hmm. And they also weighed in on this, saying boxing in particular is one of those sports where everything is by class and gender, everything. Like, you can't be 1 or 2 pounds over and compete in the welterweight, light welterweight. There's so many different divisions for that reason, because they want to make sure the right people are matching up against the right person. And that what the Olympic Committee did was just really out of bounds.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thanks so much for, just one more thing if I have a minute or just a second. This is another thing. I guess I'm going back on the weird trans. All this stuff hurts real transes, and I think the real transes like Caitlyn Jenner or like me are in a very small minority. And then so many people are just, I don't know what they are. The non-binary thing that, we talked about this before, the they and all that. Non-binary, I mean, grammatically, I know it has, computer code now. But the original term binary, like a binary star, that's two conjoined stars. So when they say they're non-binary, they're actually going backwards. If you want to be two things, you should be binary, not binary. So I know that's nitpicking, but it just shows you how absurd everything is now.
Yeah. That is crazy. Allison in Portland, Maine, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. And folks, we come back. We're going to get to the rest of your calls as well as a little bit of El Trompito in Bozeman, Montana.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
There's never been a period of time like we had for 4 years. There's never been. And then we had COVID and we got rid of it. We never got, I got great credit for the economy, great credit for the military. We defeated ISIS rapidly. I started no wars. First time in 78 years I started we didn't have any wars, these endless wars. They keep going and going, people getting killed all over the place, spending
Trump.
billions and billions.
Billions and billions, yeah. And Trump is there, and he's the crowd is just electrified. He's doing a great job, and nobody really does a better job of recounting their accomplishments than Trump. He's really good at it. He really is. I need to learn a lesson in that. Sometimes I think I'm a little too humble, which is not always great in this line of work. Sometimes you got to have a higher degree of braggadocio to really make it happen. But I'm working on it. Anyway, I want to continue with your calls. I think we have located the elusive Gil in Manila, Philippines, calling in. Gil, go right ahead, sir. What do you think about Smartmatic president being indicted because of bribing officials in the Philippines?
Yes, there's a government official here who's involved with elections who was under indictment in the States, along with the people from the voting machine manufacturer.
Yeah, Juan Andres Donato Bautista.
Yeah, well, but that's not why I called.
No, I know. That's why I'm asking you, though. What are your thoughts on that?
What are my thoughts on that?
Does it surprise you? Is it par for the course? Did you think that always happened?
Well, third world countries, there's a lot of bribery. There's a lot of corruption. The last president here, President Duterte, cleaned most of it up. But, people see easy money and they go for it. Not only here, but in a lot of countries in the third world.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's a lot of corruption in Puerto Rico. We know that.
Terrible.
So, but what I wanted to talk about is our favorite candidate for president from California, Kamala Harris. As Willie Brown might have said, Kamala estás. I think you know the difference.
Yeah.
And Willie would have known. But, there's an interesting thing in elections known as the Bradley effect. Are you familiar with the Bradley effect?
I don't know. I don't think I'm familiar with the Bradley effect. What is it?
Well, Tom Bradley, mayor of Los Angeles, very popular in Los Angeles, the first African-American mayor of a major American city that was not majority African-American, ran for governor of California twice. And the opinion polls showed him winning in a landslide against his Republican opponent. And he lost both times. And the opinion polls were way off, and they referred to it as the Bradley effect. And what that means is if you get cold calls asking your preference in an election, and one of the candidates, in this case, Bradley was African American, they don't think you're going to give your true response because you don't want to be perceived as being politically incorrect. So you'll say, I like Bradley, but when you go to the polls, you vote for his opponent. At that time, it was Governor Duke Majan in California. But they call that the Bradley effect. And I wonder if it's going to take hold again in the polls regarding this election. Just give you something to think about when the poll numbers come out.
Yeah, interesting. I think there may be some of that effect that goes on here. But I really feel that this election, different from others, is really, in my opinion, and again, some are pushing back on me saying that that's only happening in my mind, and that may be true, that I feel that this really comes down to everybody's quality of life, what they're seeing with respect to crime, what they're seeing with respect to, i.e. the border, what they're seeing with the economy, how much they can buy when they go to the store, and ultimately what is happening with their families, with their children in the public schools, things like this Tim Walz and his tampons in the bathroom, and just that entire push, what we're seeing with the Olympic Committee, all of these things that are sending the world out of whack. I think the majority of people are not extremists, and if they are extremists, they're extremists to conformity, to the status quo. They don't want to see this major radical shift in our culture. And that's just a small amount of the radical left. And I think ultimately this particular election, I think, really comes down to values where people once looked at Trump and said, you're a racist, making America great again means making America white again. Where I think now they're saying, I just want to go back to the way it was when Trump was president, where we were just trying to get him for Russia, 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 and he was the only bad guy we had. Now we've got bad guys all over the place, and Trump's the good guy. And I think, my opinion, that's what it's going to come down to for independence, Gil.
Well, it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
A Democrat said that a few cycles ago.
Yeah,
and,
James Carville.
He was right on the mark.
He sure was. Gil in Manila, Philippines, listening to us on richvaldez.com. Thank you for your call, my brother. I appreciate it. And, folks, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the rest of the news of the day, tap in a little bit with El Trumpito, and, of course, your calls. We've got calls from Montana, calls from Illinois on WLS. We've got calls from, where else? Arkansas, and more coming in. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Give us a call. The show is almost over. I'm only here until the bottom. This is the bottom until the top of the next hour. So hurry up. I'm Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Call now, 833-4-Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez here with you till 1 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm in New York, and our phone number is 833-482-5337. I want to tap back into the live feed of President Trump in Bozeman, Montana, talking about the immigration crisis and more of the failures of Que Mala Eres.
What a place they come from, South America in this case. The country said, we're not letting them back in, and they would put major aircraft, big airplane, on the runway. So if we were coming in with a plane, you couldn't land, they'd come back. They blocked up the road, so if we bust them in, if we took them in by ship, any way we took them in, they wouldn't let them back. So the general told me that, sir, I'm sorry, we can't get them back. They'll never take them back. They don't want them back. MS-13 gang members, who can blame them, right? So I said, how much money do we pay them? He goes, sir, we pay them $750 million a year. Sir? I said, all right, inform the countries that they're delinquent. They're not taking their criminals back. They're sending criminals in. You know, they send them in the caravans. They put some really bad types in the caravans, and they pour in by the thousands, that we're not paying them anymore. We're ending it on day one. I signed a document. The next day, I come into the beautiful Oval Office, so beautiful, resolute desk. I sit down. Sir, we have a call from Guatemala. Sir, we have a call from Mexico. We have all these calls, and they call and they wanted to know, sir, we understand there's a misunderstanding. I said, no, why? There's no misunderstanding. You're sending your criminals into our country and you're not taking them back. And I'm not paying you anymore. You're not getting any more subsidy from the United States of America. And they all said the same thing. The calls came in early in the morning. They all said the same thing. Sir, there must be a misunderstanding. There's a misunderstanding, sir. We would love to have MS-13 back in our country. We love them very much, sir. They're wonderful people. And we took tens of thousands. We took thousands and thousands out. You know, believe it or not, there were a lot on Long Island. You read the story where they killed two beautiful 16-year-old girls walking to school, and they killed them with a knife. They sliced them up into little pieces. You know why? Because that's much more painful than getting shot. And
He's
they
100%
wanted to,
right.
they did,
and that is El Trompito Donaldus Magnus talking about the vicious nature of these gangs from El Salvador and Venezuela and everything else that's coming through the border. I want to get to your calls because there's a lot of you that want to weigh in on this. Let me see. Where did I leave off with before? Let's go to Tim, who's calling us from Illinois on WLS. Tim, go right ahead.
Hello, Rich. How are you doing tonight?
Wonderful, thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what. It don't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. I'm a factory worker. I live in Southern Illinois, way different than Chicago. And all I know is my groceries were cheaper, my gas was cheaper. I mean, you know, if you want to hit somebody, you hit them in the pocketbook.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Joe Biden has done. Where I live, we don't have...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
Where I live, we don't have illegal immigrants here. They thank the good Lord. But I don't understand why people don't understand about the word illegal.
I don't think it's that they don't understand. I think it's that they don't care. There's a lot of people that would much rather stick up for people than for the rule of law. So you tell them that, look, this woman, this child, this man, they were illiterate and they were facing poverty. They're under a horrible regime like the Maduro regime, let's say, in Venezuela. This guy's been in a gang since he was 11 years old, trying to, put food on the table for himself because his parents were incarcerated, whatever the case may be, right? You tell that sob story to many people, and I bet you at least half of them would say, oh, my gosh, that person needs a chance at a better life. This person needs a chance at the American dream. So when you tell them, well, they have to get to the end of the line and come here and do X, Y, and Z, and you add Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and everybody else out there saying, the only reason they're suffering in their country is because the United States went there during the Reagan years and disrupted everything in the Northern Triangle in South America. This is really our fault. Who are we to turn these people away when they come seeking asylum at our border and the violins play in the background and then voila, that's it. So most people say, forget it. You're right. They're not illegal. No human is an illegal human. These are undocumented people, but they deserve a chance at the American dream like anybody else. And then they buy that. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. I'm saying it's great as long as we do it in an orderly way And these are not the people Trump is talking about, right? Trump is talking about people that are known terrorists, people that are known violators of the law, that have warrants, active warrants, that are being released from prisons. When you have that situation going on, you can't just open your doors to somebody that's being released from prison. Your own country doesn't want you, so what makes you think my country should want you? And I think that's what this really boils down to. But you're right. People just don't see it. They see the human side, and I never want to diminish someone's compassion. I just want them to also include some critical thinking, so that they realize, while I can be compassionate for you and your situation and your plight, I also have to be compassionate for myself and for my country, for my neighbors, and for my children. And for other people's children that have to deal with this, like, Lake and Riley, that's somebody's child. And she's not around today anymore because of these poor policies. And I don't care what my friends on the left have to say. If we did a better job at the border, these children would be alive today. And there's a lot of little girls that were raped and murdered. And if you have one, it's one too many, in my opinion. So, Tim, I get what you're saying, and I'm glad that you're not facing that problem where you are, but so many Americans are. And that's the rhetoric. The Democrats and everybody on the left, they attack the heartstrings. They go after the emotions. They don't care about issues. They purport to care about people. And it's that angle that they take where they are able to gain some success in getting into people's heads. And we have to do our best in communicating with our friends and neighbors and people that we're in touch with and explain to them that all that's great, but ultimately we can't sustain this this massive emotion over logic approach. We have to use logic. We have to use common sense. We have to use the real deal because if we can't pay for these things, we're all screwed. Tim in Southern Illinois, thank you for your call. Big shout out to WLS 890, the big 89. And let me see, we continue. Let's go to Montana. Let's check in with Lance. Hey, Lance, you're in Kalispell, Montana. What's going on? It's Trump country tonight.
Good evening, sir. Thank you. Yes, Mr. President Donald Trump is speaking in one is probably the deepest blue part of our state here. And even though we are extremely large in landmass and small in population, it seems all of a sudden Montana's become a focal point in the future election. But I just want to speak to the courage and the testament of not only the Trump family, but their organization. That they have been coming here. I mean, we're nowhere on the map, according to everybody in New York, the left coast, and whatever. But all of a sudden, we have a presidente coming, speaking in the deepest blue part of our state to stir up what is right and good for what's going to be the future of this country.
Yeah, I think that's great. And by the way, he's a New Yorker. And he cares about what's going on in Montana, or he wouldn't be there. And he's trying to get this, I forget the last name of the guy running for governor there, running for Senate. And you mentioned that there's a lot of attention on that race, and that's because they're trying to take that Senate seat and from John Tester. And I think that it looks like they're going to be successful, or at least they have a good opportunity to be successful. This candidate, I want to say his name is Seehee. I think I'm saying that right. Seems to be doing a bang-up job and well-received, at least by the Trump crowd tonight. So thank you, Lance. I appreciate it, and very good take on what's going on. Big shout-out to you guys in Kalispell, Montana. KOFI in the building. We continue going a little bit, let me see, we're Alabama, Montana, Vermont, and break. That's what I'm told to do in my ear. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back to you guys. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You have great guests on, and not only are they great, but they have the credentials, the background, and you always do your homework. Really appreciate everything you do.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we go to your calls. Let's go to Roach, Missouri, KRMS, and check in with Janet. Janet, what's on your mind tonight?
Hi, Rich. Hey, I'm just wondering, with the governor of Minnesota wanting to protect pedophiles as sexual orientation, I don't know. It's just something makes me feel like he may have an expunged record as a pedophile, as
I don't know.
teenager
That's
or
a
young
tough
adult.
bridge for us to cross because for the record to be expunged, it would have to have happened when he was a child. And I think for the most part, a lot of the people that are pro pedophile, if you will, or, pushing that whole idea, that crazy minor attracted persons and whatnot, most of these people are not pedophiles themselves. They believe in this this crazy Keynesian idea that comes from Dr. Alfred Kinsey, who made himself the godfather of the sexual revolution in the United States back in the 1950s. And this guy was a Looney Tune. But he said some crazy, crazy things. Again, these are not my thoughts. These are his. He said things like infants would experience orgasms, and he conducted research to find that out. I don't know what kind of research he did, but the guy is horrible. Then there was another one of his acolytes. I'm forgetting his name right now. The guy that got arrested after he admitted to raping 400 kids. That he is another research scientist that was raping kids. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Anyway, these guys are Looney Tunes. Now, so they themselves, are they pedophiles? I don't know, but they often talked about this intergenerational sex and how this was a benefit for children and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know anything about Walz. I think Tim Walz is just part of the establishment left, the radical progressives that want to protect this type of thing, to allow it to come to pass because they want to open the door to that. Why? Your guess is as good as mine. I can't say no. I can only say no that I don't see any record of that. But it does beg the question, right? Why? Why would you want to defend these people? Why would you want to recognize a minor attracted person, as they call it, or as many would call it, a pedophile or someone with pedophilia tendencies? Why would you want to recognize that as its own sexual orientation? Why do you want to legitimize that? This is a crime. It's a danger to children. It's not something that we should ever recognize or legitimize or legalize, in my opinion, Janet.
Oh, I agree. And it was just something about him, just like, how did he get to be a governor in Minnesota? And I'm sure there's a lot of good people in Minnesota who do not approve of what's going on with him and causing the, bad reputation for their state. It's just this world is just so crazy to think what's really happening compared to what it was when you and I grew up, of what goes on today.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think there are a lot of good people there. And it's what happens in a lot of places. You get the radical fringe that takes over one big city, and then they try to make that whole city kind of succumb to their will. And then they use the teachers union, they use the government, they use the media, the school system, and everything else they have at their disposal to make it happen. And little by little, they go making those moves. We saw it happen in Colorado. In Colorado, you had Jared Polis, who started as a low-level politician and went to Congress, became governor, senator, all these things. And they took Colorado from being a red state some 2 decades ago now to being a very blue state, a very progressive state with a very high unemployment rate because they were the first ones to legalize recreational marijuana. And what they found was that as soon as they did that, they found lots of people in the public parks smoking weed out in the open every day, and the unemployment went up. And it didn't increase productivity or whatever they thought might have happened. It caused another problem. And this is what the left does. They create problems to ultimately create a society that's dependent on the government. And that's where the government loves to be, where people need a handout and they love to be there to give them whatever they feel like giving them. And that's not something I'm interested in. I'm sure many of our listeners aren't interested in that either. And that's why we have to make sure we get the right people elected so that we have the country that we want to have and we can live the lives we want to live as opposed to living the life that the government wants to give us. Janet, big shout out to everybody in Missouri on KRMS. Thank you for your call. I really appreciate that. Very insightful. I'm going to pause right here. We're coming back for the speed round from Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Montana, Ohio, Vermont, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, as policy on this program, if you disagree with us, you get to move to the front of the line. But it is the speed round. That means you've got 20 seconds or you get cut off. Let's go to John, Burlington, Vermont, WVMT. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, Rick, how do you define prejudice?
All right. Well, I don't want to steal your 20 seconds, but I know you have a problem with Trump overemphasizing crimes from immigrants. Is that correct?
Well, prejudice is characterizing a group by the actions of a few, and that's exactly what you do when you pick out a crime that was committed by one immigrant and you characterize the whole group that way. That's prejudice.
Then you know what? I'm going to define prejudice as Rich Valdez with an S. I am incredibly prejudiced against those that come to this country to rape young girls. I will be prejudiced against that every day, all day, any day of the week. I have a bias towards that. I don't claim to be objective or anything else on that. I don't like it. I don't want it to ever happen again, and I don't believe it should happen, John. Thank you for the call. Shout out to WVMT. Let us continue. Let's go to Ray, Troy, Alabama, WDJR. Go right ahead quickly.
Thank you for allowing me to be part of America at Night.
Yes, sir.
We need to get Trump to talk about the issues because his calling people dumb and stupid is in the liberal fields.
Sure, but here's the thing. I've been tapping into him all night on this rally, and all he's been talking about is the issues. I haven't heard him insult anybody. Now, he may have let a couple of insults out while we weren't covering it, but by and large, he's been up there for like an hour, and he's been talking about policy issues and the issues that are affecting, you and me and everybody else in this country, whether it's the border or everything else. As Frank pointed out, John, in Burlington, that to the point where I'm prejudiced, and I am. So I agree that you want him to stay on the issue, and the issue to me is the economy, the border. I think those are the two principal issues that we have right now: the economy and the border. And I think he's been pretty resolute on that. I think he's been solid with his message discipline. If he's not throwing jabs, then he's not doing his job, right? He's not being Trump. But good point. Well received on my end. Big shout out to you, Ray in Troy, Alabama, WDJR in the building. Let us continue. We go to, where do we go? Let's see. We've got Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Joe, go right ahead.
Yeah, on WLS tonight, too.
Oh, nice. WLS.
Yep. Too many Cardinals again tonight. What I wanted to say was Biden mentioned sizeflation here a while back. We've all known everything's getting smaller and staying the same price or going higher, and you get less of it. But I did not know, I'm an amateur songwriter on the side, and I did not know that the top 40 in rock and country that Casey Kasem started, they are now the top 30. Now, what do you think?
Wow. I don't know. I wish we could finish that, but I got to go. Joe, big shout out to you. Have a great weekend, America. Take care. Good night, and God bless you. I am Rich Valdez. Hasta la próxima.